Right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Performance Scrutiny Committee for Partnerships. We're going to be looking at two bodies today, SRS and Safer Newport. Before we make a start, I just need to read this out. So, this Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council Standing Orders. The Council Standing Orders and Code of Conduct will apply at all times, and members should conduct themselves accordingly. Please, for those attending online, switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you're not speaking to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise. Can I also remind members to ensure their chat function is switched on and use that facility to indicate when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I invite you to do so, and remember to unmute your microphone and switch your camera on. A recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Welsh translation of the proceedings can be provided upon request. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the council. Can I also ask as well, because we all our councillors today are online, can I just ask that when everyone speaks, if you could face the screen rather than facing me, it would be great, because then the microphone's over there and hopefully everyone will be heard by those online. So, first part of the agenda is apologies. So, I know we've had apologies from Councillor Davis and Councillor Jones. Does anyone have any declarations of interest at this stage? I'll take the deafening silence as a no. So, we'll move on to the first item then, which is the Shared Resource Services updates at SRS. I was just wondering, we got the cabinet member for.
Leader is cabinet member.
Oh, of course, yes. Sorry. Yeah.
Apologies for the leader.
Oh, that's fine. Thanks. So yeah, if I could hand over to you then, please, Tracy. And,
thank you.
Thanks.
Chair, thanks, councillors. So we got a number of colleagues around the table in the spirit of partnership. We didn't deliberately sit all Newport and SRS colleagues on that side of the table. That was a bit of a mistake. Obviously, this is a partnership that was originally talked about at Scrutiny back in 2016. Scrutiny conducted a review of our then IT service and the options available, and were very much part of us progressing forwards in the partnership. From Newport, we work closely with SRS. We've got myself, Tracy McKim, Mark Blezard and Dominic Gibbons from the digital service, and I'll hand over to Matt Lewis, who is the Chief Operating Officer for the SRS, to introduce his colleagues and take you through the report. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Tracy. Just for people on the call, what we've got today, we've got myself, Matt Lewis, Chief Officer for the SRS. Mike.
I'm Mike Doveman. I'm one of the Assistant Directors in the SRS and Operations.
Kath Bevan-Seymour, I'm the Deputy Chief Operating Officer.
Sarah Stephens, Head of Service Management.
Annette Drew, Head of Resources.
Okay, so we've got the paper to talk through today. So this is an overall position for the SRS in 4 areas. So we always do an overview of the SRS in the document. Always helpful for any new members to kind of catch up on a little bit on what we do and where we are. Governance arrangements of the SRS, the performance of the SRS to Newport specifically, and then major initiatives. So there's a number of strategic projects working their way through of which Newport will benefit, and there are Newport specific projects which also run through the SRS, working with colleagues like Dom and Mark in the room today. I won't read through the paper word for word, obviously, but if we go down to the second page, we've got bits around the new target operating model, which we brought into the previous meeting. Just a little bit of an update on that. We've made a lot of changes at the SRS. We've brought together a lot of services over the years. Quite proud, I think, in the team here today that have actually brought those services in with very little impact to the other organisations that are in the SRS or to other teams. And what we've done over the last couple of years is try to smooth some of the problems out that we had before. We had issues with certain roles or with certain ways of working or differences in how we did things across the organisation. So we've smoothed a lot of that out now. And then there's a lot more consistency across the SRS in our provision out to partners. across the education estate, the corporate estate, or whoever that kind of end customer is, police and local government. If we go down to the governance arrangements in section 4, so the image on that page is a really high level overview of how the governance works at the SRS. The pink on the left hand side, we've got the strategic board, and the people on that board are Bev Owen, the Chief Executive of Newport, and her colleagues from the other authorities. And we've also got the leader, so we've got Councillor Scrutiny. And for the other authorities, it might be a mix of kind of councillors who've got the portfolio in that organisation. So that's why that person comes to that board. Underneath the strategic board, then we've got Finance and Governance Board, which, you know, as it says, it kind of covers all the budget, all the audit, all the risk kind of conversations, and the audit function as well. And we've also got a business and collaboration board. So the business and collaboration board is where there will be the conversations around what sort of projects do we want to do as organisations moving forward. There's a kind of pattern to those things. Basically, you know, business collaboration board, what's the right thing to do? Finance and governance board, can we afford it? Strategic board, yes, no, setting the strategic direction, really oversimplifying it. Everything on the right-hand side then is all about kind of internal workings of the SRS, from myself and Kath into the SLT, of which Sarah and Annette are also part, and into the performance of the organisation and how that all works. And then the bottom right-hand corner, that's how it kind of engages and interacts with each individual organisation. Because whilst there are things that we will do for you all, there are also things that you will want individually, and rightly so. So there are differences across the 6, but there are also lots of similarities. Hopefully over time, the similarities will grow and the differences will reduce, hopefully over time. That's the kind of aim. So into the financial governance section then, and the breakdown on page 4, I think it is there, of the finances for Newport specifically. So the wider budget for the SRS is much larger, but this is just the Newport specific piece. And I'm not going to talk through all of that, but happy to take any questions on the financial specifically. And the financial outturn then in section 4.3. So I've tried to correct a lot of those words in there away from product names and technology names into what it actually does, but it's not easy to do in some cases. But the overall position is there was a 17k overspend, so slight overspend, which was funded from reserve for Newport specifically we had in the SRS, which there is, as you'll see in the next section, there is a healthy amount of that from things we've done for Newport in the past. And then it talks about all the things that were either overspends or underspends within the year in that paragraph underneath, and the reasons for those things. So again, happy to take any questions on those at the end if there are any specifics, or anybody wants to know anything, any more detail about any of those. You know, everybody that's come with me they know all of that inside out. So and if we go down to 4.4, I just mentioned the reserves that Newport has specifically in the SRS. There are different categories of reserve that we hold. There is a whole SRS reserve, which is things that we've done for everybody and we've saved some money. Might be staffing, might be shared contracts, and that surplus sits in the SRS, and we use that for the benefit of all partners. And some of those projects will come at the end where we have used that to benefit all partners. But then there's also a partner-specific reserve for each individual partner, and that's driven from contracts that you hold individually for yourselves that we buy for you. So if your Microsoft contract is reduced, or your any contract we buy for you specifically has reduced, or there's a bit of a saving, that sits in a Newport specific reserve in the SRS that you have approval over. I can't spend that on your behalf without the approval of the Newport people in the room. And then, you know, as you look at that paragraph underneath, the 23-24 drawdown on those reserves, those are all things that Newport wanted to do specifically for Newport that were funded from the reserve that we held for you, driven out of savings we've made for you since joining the SRS. Some of them are relatively small, you know, a couple of contracts here and there, but the one at the very bottom of that list, the Newport website, that's a really important one, because we've been able to fund that work in its entirety from start to finish from SRS reserve or Newport that we've managed to kind of create over time. Newport would have had to do that anyway, and I really would have found that money from somewhere, but that kind of need to find that money in the budget for it was met from our side on your behalf, which was, I think that's a really, really positive story. It's a great outcome for the project. funded with a great outcome of funding to begin with. So Newport was a really positive position, and there is still a positive set of reserves sat within the SRS as it stands today for Newport work. On to section 4.5, audit in the SRS. So if we go back and you know, this is Kath has done all of this, you know, not myself, but we've taken audit from a really difficult place 3 or 4 years ago to what's now a really positive place. Very different picture on audit. We're now, when you look at the kind of circle diagram on page 6, at the bottom of that page, that's a diagram created by audit out of the audit system. So the highest rating you can get is satisfactory, and that's where we currently sit from an audit perspective. You will rarely see audits hitting audit committees. You will now not see at all in the last 12 months any audit that's below or certainly in the kind of needing improvement categories and at the lower end of the audit ratings. Everything now typically comes in at full satisfactory or as close as you can get to that, which is really, really positive. And I think that's been enabled by, you know, Kath focusing resources on getting audit actions done and actually spending the time and effort in preparing for those audits when they come in as well. So that is in a really, really positive place audit for us right across all partners. If you look over onto page 7 then, and you've got the full list there of all the audits that have taken place. And on the right-hand side of that, you've got the number of findings in the high, medium and low categories. So again, more than happy to take any questions. We've tried to put a little bit of explanation in with each of those line items as to what it actually means, because some of those terms, again, they're quite technical terms. You know, if we just left it to say Halo, no one would probably know what that is, but Halo is the service desk tool. So we've tried to explain each one there with the ratings they get as well. Over onto page 8, we've just got the risk management piece there and who manages which sort of risks across the organisations, across the boards. We split that a while ago, so finance and governance have their own risks, business and collaboration have their risks, and we manage them in those different groups. Anything that any importance get escalated to chief exec and board member level. And there is only currently one risk that has been escalated out of those groups into the strategic board, and that is a risk around the potential of schools stepping away from the SLA that the SRS provides. If I'm honest, Newport, and this is a Karen Keane kind of drive, Karen has absolutely worked with the schools in Newport to bring more of them into SLA. So this picture in Newport is really positive. We're starting to see a bit of an issue in some of our other authorities. So, you know, if we could kind of bottle up Karen and use her in other authorities, it would be a perfect position, I think, at the moment. So really, really positive again. And that there's a really strong working relationship between us and Karen that has probably taken 5 or 6 years to build, I think, as well, since they came in. Everybody's put quite a lot of effort into that, and it's working really, really well. If we go over onto section 5, page 9, this is the performance. So we have a scorecard that we monitor at the SRS at each of our SLT meetings. It's split out into 4 different categories: finance, customer, the internal stuff, and then the kind of organizational pieces. And again, happy to take any questions on this at the end, but you know, there's lots of information in there. There's lots of numbers, lots of you know, green graphs and a couple of red ones and things going up and down. And in the main, what the main comment on this would be is that it's all going in the right direction. It's all really positive. You know, right the way through from the finance, the savings, the reserves that we hold that we've already talked about, through to the performance on the things like the service desk, the SLAs that we meet for you on your behalf. And when you look at the kind of purple SLA ones in the internal category at the bottom of page 9, that's where we start to see, you know, what does this actually mean for people in the organisation? How quickly do they get things solved, or you know, what kind of percentage of things are we fixing in the right levels of time? And these are really high. You know, we are meeting very high levels of service levels, and it's way above the agreed levels, which is positive. And the challenge for us then becomes, how do we maintain that? Because we do, on things like the service desk, we do get quite a lot of turnover. Like any frontline role, you will get a lot of people come into the service, figure out where they want to work long term, and then move on to that next role. So we do have quite a lot of high turnover. But you know, Sarah and Kevin, the service desk function for us, have managed that really, really well, I think. And there's a really strong group of people in there now that are doing exactly what we need them to do. So kind of over on to page 10, we go into some detail then about each of the categories and a bit of written detail about what each means. Just, for a bit of background, if anyone weren't certain what they were. I've mentioned the first point of contact one. The important things for organizations are that when you phone, the call is answered quickly, it gets resolved quickly, and it gets resolved as close to the first point of contact as possible. So our target for that is 75% of every call that comes in gets closed at that first point of contact. And for Newport, we're delivering 80%. And that's across a 12-month period. And we're doing that same kind of performance for all of our organizations. So there's no one that sticks out a long way from the other. We kind of hit the similar measures for everybody because we provide the same kind of service for everybody. The customer satisfaction one then is quite important because that is taken directly from the organizational feedback. If you've ever logged a call with the SRS, you'll get an email, a couple of days after the call's closed, maybe to say, maybe you'd like to fill a survey and tell us how the performance was. And that 94.2% there, that's an actual measure from all of those calls that staff make across Newport City Council specifically. So, 94% of the people that have filled out that survey have said that they were really, really happy with that service. And we do get, everyone we get that isn't really good, we will make a call to that individual to find out what we could have done better and how we correct it going forward. So again, in Sarah's world, we've done a lot of work around contacting directly the organisation, learn and quickly fix any issues that have come up and how do we do it better next time. So if we move on to then the section 6, page 12, the majority of the rest of the pages are really all project focus and the major initiatives. Again, I won't go through them all in detail, but I'll kind of touch on a few as I go through because some of them are really important, not just today, they are really important going forward. Something like AI and automation. So this is one of our 5 strategic strands that exist across the SRS, and we're trying to run them across all organizations in a consistent and similar way. So Newport are part of a 4LA group that is trying to move forward with things like Copilot, things like NDL automation tool sets. You have your own resource that tries to drive those things forward, and we have our resource and we support you trying to move those things forward in the organization. These will become more and more important as the months and years roll on, absolutely for all organizations. I think they are being seen in a lot of organizations and very similar in Newport, I think, as opportunities for making things more efficient, for doing things differently, and for dealing and trying to tackle the problems that we have around all of your budget savings, cost savings, etc. If an opportunity arises, can we do something differently? That's a way we work on it across multiple organizations. So again, we try and take the learnings from one and apply it across the others. We have Copilot across all of our partners. We have NDL across all of our partners. We've bought it once, we've done it one way, and we're trying to help everybody move forward in a very similar way across all of those product sets. So there's a long way to go with AI and automation. There's lots of opportunity. I know Newport got it as a really key priority in all of their work as well. So our job is about supporting those things to move forward. How can we work on the same tools? How can we support Newport to drive the things forward they need to do from an organisational perspective, the same as we will for our other partners? And then there are lots of examples that we've already put in place with AI and automation. There's a business case going to our strategic board next week, which talks about all the things that have been done across all the organisations, which have saved a certain number of hours or removed the need to do a manual process, and a calculation of all those hours saved and what that might mean to the organisations if we were then to kind of move forward and do it across all. And it's a really interesting read, some of that. So, we could probably get that across to the group as well at some point. But there's a couple of examples in this area. We're working on things like translation tools. The one that comes up all the time that everybody is really, really focused on is minute taking and the creation of minutes out of Copilot transcription from a meeting. And there's lots and lots of examples across all of our organizations on that. And I know that tends to be the first place that people look and focus because it's almost an easy start in the AI and Copilot journey. But there are so many things we can do past that. And I know Newport are kind of pushing on past that as well at the moment. 6.3 then, onto page 13. Connecting Wales. So this is a contact centre solution. And again, we've been working with the service areas on this. So Karen Gregg, Kerry Foot, they've been part of a service-driven project that the SRS are enabling the technology for, and that has worked really, really well. We've got all the contact centre owners and service leads and even the contact centre staff in different meetings and sessions. Together they specified a solution. Together we bought a solution. And yesterday we went live with Blaen y Gwent. We go live with Torfaen next week, Newport, Monmouthshire the week after, and then Newport we go live in December. The only reason for that gap is because Newport's current contract isn't up until December. So as part of that, Newport are the one organisation that will actually make a financial saving, whereas the others is more about efficiency saving, which is really positive, you know. And that example and that way of working is what we're trying to apply to every single project as we go forward. But hugely positive, worked really well, driven by the service area, enabled by us, as all these projects should be. 6.4 then is a shared data platform that we are putting in place. We've done a lot of work with Sean Powell and Erica in Newport around data platforms. And what we're going to be putting in going forward is something that Newport actually already have in place, which is positive. So we've got knowledge here that we'll be able to call on and pull upon. And you know, long story short on that one, we've done lots of discovery, lots of use cases, lots of examples, lots of trying to figure out what to buy and how to put it all together. But that should result in a project which starts to see things like a single view of child platform from around the end of November, mid-December onwards, the kind of first proof of concept. And again, we will be doing that across 4 organisations, hopefully taking the ideas of all the different social care functions on how to build a dashboard related to single view of children. Obviously, we won't be sharing the data. That's just the ideas for how we build the individual dashboards per partner. But again, whole principle being learn from the service area, implement once, replicate to many. The next one then, 6.5, is connecting care. We're running this as a strategic project across all the SRS partners, and this is a huge national project to move away from the current the current social care system that exists in health to a solution that is then kind of sat more in the local gov space. And there are many reasons for that from a national perspective. But again, you know, trying to summarise this project down. Newport have led the procurement on this on behalf of the region. Joe James and Richard League have done an absolutely amazing job in corralling a group of people together that have been really difficult to bring together. And what we end up with now is a procurement that is just coming to the end, where we have a preferred bidder, and that preferred bidder will then implement this once on behalf of Gwent, one way, on behalf of 5, because Caerphilly are also in that project, on behalf of 5 local authorities in the Gwent region. So hugely positive, and again, that's unique in Wales. Everybody else is going a different direction with their project, so they will have individual versions of a social care system. Gwent will stick together and they will build together, they will work together, they will develop together. And again, that's enabled by some of the foundation work we put in the past, but by an absolutely solid procurement process, which couldn't have gone better so far. And the last one then, 6.6 for the strategic board projects. This is a collaborative website one. So you'll be aware that the Newport website was redeveloped and went live February 14th earlier this year. That was done with a product called Local Gov Drupal. And again, that was Newport leading on, this is how it should work across all, this is how it could work across all the partners. This is how easy it could be. This is how you could redo a website into a format that everybody shares. And this isn't just an SRS sharing project. You are now in a pot there with around 50 councils across England and Wales. All of those councils build, they share back into the pool, and you will be able to benefit from something that someone else has built and the other way around. So meeting things like accessibility standards on your website will be much simpler moving forward and should always be kept up to date because everybody is working on it together. So hugely positive. It was a recommendation that came from us to try and move to a product that we could all share. We work with Newport to pick the solution, and then we work with them to implement it as well. So again, I've forgotten the name, sorry, in content person in the comms function Newport, but Kate. So Kate worked with us on that one and drove that project, and absolutely humongous task of trying to sort all the content out as we worked our way through the project. So again, a massive thanks to Kate. It's a big list of Newport people thanking this one. But the next step for us on that is, you know, if another partner needs to change their website at the point they do, we will absolutely then take the Newport work and apply it to those organisations for their benefit. But that's all the strategic board strand projects that we're working across all 5 partners. Section 7 then on page 15 and down. there are a number of individual organisation projects that we might have done it for all the organisations, but there are individual implementations or slightly different ways of doing them. Some of these are worth highlighting because they very much strengthen your cyber resilience position and your information security position within the council. So the first couple on that page, 7.1 and 7.2, really simply, what they mean is that your Office 365 environment is backed up. And it sounds strange to say you should back up Office 365. You know, that's a massive global organization. Surely there can't be any problems with that. No. Never say never. So absolutely, we need to make sure we've got all of the information that you hold in Office 365 safe and backed up and available somewhere else if something were to happen. And then the next door one, that is a copy of all of the data that you have for Newport that we hold for you and for the other organizations. That is actually stored in a different offsite location from where the data center or from where Office 365 is. So really big ticks in the boxes for any kind of cyber resilience stuff or any digital resilience type stuff. That's absolutely perfect for all that. You are absolutely protected now, and that's on top of everything we've done in the past around things like the item you can see in 7.3, which is it's labeled as Siemens SOC. Again, they're technology terms for a group of people that monitor your security for you. SOC is just Security Operations Center. So that there are a group of people that monitor 24 hours a day everything that comes in and out of the organization for you and for our other 4 partners. There's a whole list of things there that it tells you that they monitor. But again, this puts you in a really strong information security, cyber resilience position. And you always assume breach and things like this, always assume that something can get in or something can happen, which is really important for us because we try and put those solutions in place, which mean that we can make sure that you're as protected as we can possibly be. 7.4 then, all of those items before, they absolutely then help Newport to be able to attain and achieve and re-obtain their PSN accreditation every year. So I think for the past 2 or 3 years, we've got this now every year in advance of the old certificate expiring, which again, a bit like audit, that might not have been the case if you go back a few years. There might have been gaps in between getting the accreditation. Process was a bit bumpy and not quite joined up. But working with Mark and the team now, absolutely, we are in front of PSN accreditations. We're in front of what your vulnerabilities are. We're able to sort that out and then be able to answer in advance your PSN accreditation submissions. So it's becoming simpler, quicker, easier every year to get the health checks and to get the accreditations, and that's working really well. It's been refined over a number of years. Last few pages then. So we're on to the 7.5 is a data center migration, and I won't go through all these numbers, but I think last time when we came, we said we were in the process of moving you from Newport Civic to Vantage Data Center. That was all complete. Newport now has no infrastructure in Civic. So there's an energy saving that kind of came back to Newport from moving all that equipment out. You're now on shared infrastructure. So the surplus that we mentioned earlier, a lot of that was created by the fact that you no longer have to have individual contracts on all kits in this building. You're now part of the wider shared infrastructure and the wider shared contracts. So you're paying, in essence, a quarter of a cost instead of a whole cost because of that kit is now shared across 4. Hugely positive, all finished, all done, you're in. There's nothing left to do on that project. The piece that's left to do on that now is more software type projects than it is infrastructure and moving things. So really positive. 7.6 is a kind of just an intro into cloud telephony. Newport is moving away from the platform it used to have onto Teams telephony. It's absolutely integrated into everything else you do. It makes absolute sense. It's what we're doing for all of our other partners. And the drive from schools may be greater than that from corporate as we go over the next few months, simply because they need to move away from the same solution that the council do, but there are more of them out of schools than there are in the council. So that applies to both schools across Newport and in the corporate, but same as we're doing across all partners, and again, working really well. There's a piece there on page 18. That's shared wireless. That's more about the shared infrastructure that we have down in Vantage. We've driven benefits out of sharing that infrastructure. We've made technology simpler, and we've made it easier for you to connect if you are working in a different location. If you were working in Pontypool Civic, or if you were in a meeting in Monmouthshire and us or something, you would be able to connect back to your infrastructure as part of that solution. So, really positive. Lots of technical work in the background. Took a lot of effort to get done, and then as most things, it looks really simple on the front end when you come to use it. The last few points then, at the bottom of page 18 onwards, kind of more into the people side. So we spent a lot of time, and Mike has put a process in place at the SRS around developing staff across the SRS. We've got various different schemes, kind of 3Ps we've called them, and it puts in different levels of the sort of things you need to know, or the training you need to have, or the experience you need to build to be able to move on within our organisation. So lots of time and effort put into that, but well received by staff, and it gives people a really clear view of, I want to be a grade 6 in this particular discipline. Therefore I know what I need to achieve. I know what training I need. I know how to get from A to B for my career. So that, again, that's been really well received. 7.8, the new service desk. I think you may have all interacted with it at some point. You may have logged a self-service call or gone to look at something on there. But what we did this year is we've launched a chatbot off the front of that Halo website. So you are able to self-serve some of your calls. The bot can log calls for you, and certain hours of the day, much like your contact centers might be going forward, there is a person sat on the end of some of those chatbots as well, so they can deal with more than one call at a time. And I think it's quite clear on the website when you kind of check it, it says you are connected to a person or you're connected to the bot. So it's quite clear. But again, we're trying to use tools and try to work in ways that we're suggesting to partners they may want to look at. But if we're not prepared to try it first, then how on earth will anyone believe it's worth doing? So that's gone really well. And again, in Sarah's area, Kev's area, released, working really positively, and we track every month how many people are using those functions as well. And then down to page 19, onto the education section. I think if you go back a few scrutiny meetings ago, when EdTech was a Welsh Government grant, there always used to be a lot of interest around what is EdTech doing, how many devices have been rolled out to schools, what impact has it had. So we've left this section in, and we think it's quite useful to see. And I know members tend to be kind of governors on different school bodies as well, so always useful. And again, there's a table there on page 20 that shows you all the devices that have been rolled out across all the schools across Newport. I think out of the schools there, we have 48 or 49, I think, in SLA. I mentioned working with Karen earlier. So all of these schools, they will get grant-funded kits still. There's still a grant fund, even though it's decreasing every year from Welsh Government, there still is grant funding. We work with Karen to prioritise where that equipment goes, and then we roll it out. So that's a reflection there of, I guess, the impact that we've had in the education sector across Newport schools and all the different devices that are rolled out. We do have an SLA with all of those schools. We worked with people like Joe Giles probably 2 or 3 years ago, again, which was a fantastic piece of work. But we reworded the whole school's SLA and repositioned it as if we were head teachers rather than if we were tech people. And that helped all of the heads realise and understand, this is what I'm getting from that SLA rather than just a bunch of technology terms sat in the document. And then down to the last piece on sections 9 and 10 on page 21. We put a couple of pieces on the end around net zero contribution and social value at the SRS. So net zero, we've made quite a step forward in that. I mentioned the amount of energy that would have been reduced in Newport Centre specifically as a result of us taking out what was old and inefficient equipment and being able to turn off generators and power hungry aircon units. All that's gone from the Civic itself specifically. But in our Vantage data centre, we can prove that we use 100% renewable energy in the data centre. And again, we are reducing what we use over time by moving to other services as well. So we're hoping, actually, that bottom paragraph there is section 9. We are hoping to move from a 75 kilowatt energy draw in our data centre down to 40 kilowatts over the next month or so. And that's a result of buying more efficient equipment, of reducing the amount of equipment that we need, or a really positive position for actually reducing down the amount of energy that our 4 local authorities consume. And then the last section on social value, we have, I guess, 4 apprentices we've got at the SRS, so we have an apprenticeship scheme. More often than not, those apprentices will end up somewhere else within the organisation. They will get a role in a different function or a role in the function that they came in as an apprentice. I think we've taken the last 2 or 3. One of them's actually gone on to work in turbine in a slightly different role. But really well received, really positive apprenticeships. And I think all 5 of us, yes, I think we're apprentices at one point or time in our careers. So that's something which is really, really important to all of us. We're not expecting everyone to come in with a shiny degree and progress through the organisation that way. We want to make sure that we can bring people in through that route and through the kind of ground up route as well. That's probably all I want to go through. And I know I probably went through more than I was going to be fair, but it's a useful background of everything we do. There's so much there. We do a lot with Mark and Dom. We work a lot with Newport on what we do. Everything is driven from the priorities that Newport have for us. And I think since joining back in 2017, I think it was, I think the service is in a much more positive place than it was. The Newport Technology Service is in a much stronger place because of that shared infrastructure, as it is for all of our partners. And for me now, the future is where do we go from here? What do we start to build on top of that great foundation that we've laid between us?
Thank you, Matt. Before I open up the questions, can I just say thanks to you and your colleagues for putting such a detailed report together, and certainly for explaining it as well. By putting all the context in, you've actually answered most of the questions I had, so that'll shorten me a little bit. Before I open up the questions, do any of your colleagues want to add anything to what you've said, or should I just open up the questions there? No? Okay, Councillor Screen, I know you wanted to ask some questions to start this off, so we'll kick off with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, very thorough presentation. Thank you. And you did avoid a lot of the technical stuff that people might, lay people might, find difficult to understand. Yeah, I wanted to ask you on page 9. You talk about FPOC, which is and you've got 80%. That's when somebody contacts the service desk and gets a satisfactory result straight away, I understand. And with the new organisation that you're looking at, is that 80%? I mean, it looked low, but you explained it to me a bit better, so I think I understand it a bit better. I thought it was a bit low, but you suggested it was reasonable, quite good. When you compare that to customer satisfaction, which is 94.2. So yeah, so with the new the new structures and so on you put in place, will that figure improve? That's the question there. Does that make sense?
I pick that one up if that's okay. So the first point of contact, traditionally it has where somebody is obviously phoning into the desk. And what we've done over the last 18 months is start to put more of the schools calls through into our service desk. Now, with the schools, they have what we call SLA day. So when a technician is due to visit a school, so what we might do is log the call at the first point of contact when they actually take the call at the desk, but then we schedule the call for the SLA day. Also, as we move to these new tools now, we are striving to increase our knowledge base. So anything that is raised, if it's new for us, we're then creating knowledge articles. So there's a lot more emphasis now on people being able to self-serve if those calls are come through. So we should hopefully see an upward trend. As I say, our target is normally 70% for that. So 80% we feel is a good resolution rate. But it is something that we monitor every month with the digital team in Newport through our delivery groups.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. You explained that. I understood it a bit better as the presentation was going on, so I understand it a bit better now. The other questions were page 17, training and development, and you talk about staff attrition rates. I assume, but you don't actually give details of how long the staff stay before they leave. And presumably you get you're using the training and development to keep staff. keep staff there. And you do exit interviews, presumably. So does the training and development issues come up in the exit interviews?
If you're happy for me to pick that up, okay, so yes, they do come up in the exit interviews. What we've seen from other organisations is, and we've tried to mimic that, is when you do start a new role, a lot of organisations are doing a similar vein, which is when you come in, this is the training you'll get over the next 6 months. So when you go into the new organisation, what you'll be doing for the first 6 months. So what we've seen with individuals coming in is trying to mimic that, and also at the point of when we put the job adverts out, to say we will give you clear and concise training requirements across the first X amount of months that you'll be in the organisation. So to answer your question, yes, we are trying to use this as a mechanism to move staff through the organisation to better grades, and B, give them clarity on where they want to go. Some of the individuals come in, as you can imagine, they're young people. It might be their first job, and we've got this wealth of different departments, whether it be cloud, networks, finance, for them to choose from. So the more clarity and the more transparency we can give around the paths they can use for training, the more likely they are to stay and move through our organisation.
Yeah, fine. That's good. I think that's excellent thing. Finally, the other question was on page 18. No, page 20. Sorry. About apprenticeships, and I'm glad to see that you are recruiting from the local communities for apprenticeships. And I was just wondering what links you have, if any, with further education and higher education. Do you have any links with those institutions at all?
So we have worked with the University of South Wales and various other local providers as well. And actually, you want to pick up on this one, actually?
Yeah, well, like Kat said, we have worked with them, we've had training done through them. It did lapse a bit during the pandemic. There's elements that we do need to pick up on now. We've done work experience days in the schools, and what are they called now? With the job. Thank you. Yeah.
Right.
But we did different avenues all the time.
Okay. That's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Just one more to add on that. So what we've done the last couple of years or so is when we have apprentice roles, we've also sent those out to head teachers in schools, and that has been really well received because they've come back to us and maybe the timing wasn't quite right, but let us know when you've got another one coming up at the end of the year, and maybe going forward we could line apprentice interviews up with the end of school years. Possibly that might work. I don't know, but yeah. Because we have that good relationship with all of the SLA schools, we tend to let them know when apprentice roles are coming out to see if there's anybody out there in our schools and our LAs to come and benefit working with us.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Yes, excellent. Yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Screen. I just want to check, were any of the officers joined that come in at any point there? No?
I'll just make one point on the kind of performance, and obviously it was answered by SRS, but just in terms of that first point of contact fix, traditionally that's quite a challenging target, which is why the number is a bit lower on that. So it's not that that it's any worse, it's just harder. So for instance, the complexity of all the calls that the service desk might receive, loads of bits of software, loads of bits of hardware, so to fix that higher percentage at the first point of contact is really strong. So because you can imagine if you ring a call centre of whatever description, how often do you get it fixed the first time you ring? So you're ringing a gas and electricity firm or a mobile firm or whatever, how often do you get that sorted on your first call? So it's lower in a percentage terms than the other ones, but in terms of performance it is strong.
Thanks, Mark. I can't see any hands up at the moment, but I think Councillor Marshall, did you want to follow on from what Councillor Screen was saying from our earlier discussions?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So if I get to the right part. So the first part, obviously I know about the reducing the staff turnover has already been mentioned. just how does that link in relation to ensuring the continuity of the service? And also the other point is then linking in to make sure that staff are trained, that we have the staff capacity today that we need with all the increasing technology and the new technology today, but also for tomorrow. How are we working in that partnership to make sure that's understood there? Thank you.
Yeah, I'll pick that up. Really good point. I think from a continuity point of view, we've worked with a third party, and that third party has really given us what the core competencies are. So when somebody comes into the organisation, if you come into, say, a network role, there are some core competencies that you would need to achieve to allow you to be proficient at that role. So we've worked really closely with a third party supplier to develop those training programs, which you start off as a consumer, so you're a consumer of knowledge, so you come in and you learn the core competencies. Once you're familiar with that, you'll then become a contributor, which means you'll be involved in some more project work potentially, and then you'll become established in that role after you've completed the courses. So the continuity of the service is based on the core competencies that we instill in you when you come into the organisation. Sorry, what was the second part? Was about new technology. You're being Steve.
Sorry. So you can tell I'm used to being in the room rather than being online. There we are, me and technology, there we are. It's mainly about, what did I notice? Sorry, about, yeah, so basically about making sure our staffing is basically, ready for today, but also ready for tomorrow, and going down the line, because we're seeing a lot of things like, I know ChatGPT was mentioned. ChatGPT is only a minuscule in comparison to the whole language models and things that are out there, and about understanding what it can do for us in the future. Do we have that understanding collectively about what it is that we want from it, and also the staffing that can back that up in order to make sure that we can have that? Or would you see that as a challenge, within the short and medium term?
There's probably a couple of parts to that answer. So we have a very small group of people in the SRS called strategic advisors. They are doing that horizon scanning and looking at what's coming down the line and what kind of things do we need to be preparing ourselves for to implement going forward. So some of those strategic projects that I talked through, they are as a result of that kind of horizon scanning and what can we do differently, or what can we do more effectively, or we've got 5 different technologies out in the organizations, how can we merge that into one? So they're helping advise on where we should move with things. And when you're looking at new technologies, they're then trying to skill up the operational teams or provide them with the information they'll need to be able to skill up in those areas. And the kind of second part of the answer is, when you look at when the 4 LAs specifically came into the SRS, they all had different technologies. They had different networks or different server environments or different applications. That move I described, when we moved our data center down to Vantage, and when we came out of Newport, because Newport were the last to move into the shared infrastructure, when we did that piece of work, we took you from a set of technologies that maybe some of our staff weren't aware of and weren't skilled at. We lifted you up and we put you onto an infrastructure that they all know how to operate, they all know how to support and look after. So by removing the different technologies, we're enabling more people across the SRS to be able to support the ones that are then used across everybody. So it's that 2-part answer of we're trying to do the forward-looking piece. We're trying to get that group to skill up the staff with the stuff that's coming down the line, but trying to free up a bit of that time internally by bringing you all onto the same stuff so that we have less difference and less knowledge and less experience that have to build, because we're doing the same across all organizations. A couple of parts to that.
Can I come in as well from that? I guess you were talking about the whole system and everybody, I think, Councillor. So within the NCC digital strategy, where SRS are a key partner, we also consider the skills of our own staff and our own managers and our leaders, so that everybody understands the potential and different individuals can take that as far as they need to in their work. But that is moving faster and faster, and it's really important that we support people who can run faster with that technology with limited support, and also our members of staff who need more help to get there. But we recognise that as a specific piece of work in our digital strategy as well.
Thank you. And it leads, onto the next part is, do we understand what we need or want from the systems? Because it's changing so much, there's a lot of things that we can ask of the systems. Are we fully there yet in order to grasp this technology, to fulfill our needs, to make sure that we're supporting our staff rather than being a hindrance to the staff, but also allowing them to, be more face to face rather than behind the scenes and putting things on, allowing the systems maybe to acknowledge mail, to read mail, to signpost mail, that type of thing, and others. That was just an example. Do we fully understand what it is that we need and want from the system?
Shall I start? So I guess from my part, and that's again within the digital strategy and our digital work, which we reported to another committee recently. How we're addressing that, particularly around more challenging pieces, is working collaboratively. So if I think of recently some work we've done, for example, in our housing section or in our finance sections, which are cited in the digital report, we work with SRS to provide the technology or to work with partners to provide the technology. But we, Newport City Council, need to work with individuals on their business processes. So we don't just want to speed up things that actually need unpicking and rethinking. I know you know what I mean by that, Councillor. So I guess that is very much a joint piece, which isn't just about the SRS matter.
The same answer, to be fair. That the piece that is critical is the service user at the end of that process, and that when you take the things like the contact centre project and the connecting care project, the social care one, the success in all of those areas are because the service area has been right in the heart of what we're trying to do. We recognise we're just the enablers of those things, and we probably don't know all those answers yet to your question, but I think the answer is that those answers will be built with the service areas as we move forward. And if we predetermine something for a service area today that doesn't start for 12 months from now, we probably, because as Tracy said, technology moves on so quickly, we probably will be selecting the wrong thing. So that constant back and forth with the service area to build what they need and for us to find the solution is the critical part of how it should work.
Thank you. And I know, obviously, as we move forward, it'll be very interesting to see how that develops, because simple procedures with automation will kick in. And as said, it should never replace staff. It should only be a support mechanism for staff in order to make sure that we're more efficient in what we can do, but also make sure there's more contact time on there. With another point of AI, as you probably imagine, it is of a subject of interest for myself. Within the contact centre, I know we spoke about the collaboration and linking into one contact hub. Within AI, from things, we can make AI maybe understand various things. I'm just wondering, would that have an integration in terms of the contact centre? So if people were to contact the centre, would the system understand the differences of different council policies and the different systems of Blaenau Gwent, Newport, Monmouth, etc., in order to do that? And would the staff understand that as well to avoid any complication and confusions? Because there'll be different stages, won't there? So some things, hopefully, we will understand what people want. What is the main query? Can we address that in an easier way that they don't have to escalate that further to a person where possible? And then when it does get to a person or automated system at that levels, is there ways and means that it will understand the different policies and procedures for the local authorities in moving forward? And how is that working with that collaborative work between the local authorities, where I know there's going to be similarities, but there's going to be bound to be differences because of the political differences and things like that as we work?
Love the question. Kind of.
Yeah,
So, another question, and there's loads and loads of different answers to that, but we ran a proof of concept probably about 6 months ago where we connected, and it just happened to be Monmouthshire, it could have been Newport. We connected Monmouthshire's website to a voice bot telephone call, and the proof of concept was simply to allow me to phone Monmouthshire's contact centre. This is purely trial and pilot. This isn't live at all. I could phone a telephone number. I could ask it when my bin collection day was. The bot asked me my postcode. I gave it my postcode. It came back with information that it found off the website. told me what my bin collection day was, the colour of the bin for that day, and when it would be collected. So it's absolutely possible with all the technology we have now. It takes quite a bit of effort to programmatically code a lot of that information in the background. And that's when you get into the differences between generative, non-generative AI. And are you going to allow your provision to come up with answers that maybe aren't based on fact on your website? So that's when you kind of back and forth between generative, non-generative. And I sit on the group for the kind of AI steering group for Wales as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on there around AI, lots of different tools, lots of different ways of doing things. But I think your answer is the contact center project that is up and running. What we've agreed is that we will keep that group together, because that wasn't ever about just a technology solution. That project is not just about we need to buy a new contact center. That project is about what can the contact center of the future look like and be like and operate like. So we're going to keep that service group together, and they are having those sorts of conversations about what kind of repetitive tasks do we get in the contact center that we could replace with AI that would allow us as contact center professionals to be able to spend more time on the complex issues that people call with. So that's the kind of thing we're looking at, but it absolutely is possible, and we will be doing things like that.
Thanks. And just to come in from a council point of view, so at one of the other committees, can't remember which one, on Monday, we talked about the customer contact development. Place and Corporate, thank you. So at the Place and Corporate Committee on Monday, we talked about the customer contact project and how we, because I know you're talking about contact centre work, councillor, but actually customer contact is here, there and everywhere, and that is just one place, a big important place, but one part. So there's a big piece of work within the council to review our customer contact and how we can reduce repeat demand, for example, where people don't get all the information first time and need to contact us again. I won't get into that too much here because that's not this committee, but where SRS come into that is they have the technology, the skills, and also much of that is shared. And if we need to develop new things, that's shared. Ditto the website, which is an important part of our customer contact. So we have our own programme of work where we very much work together on the technical aspects, and sometimes we might be challenging and pushing ahead with the technology, and sometimes you're already there with another authority and we can learn from that.
Thank you. I'm not going to say the company, but I do work in a contact centre outside of my council role. And some of the things that's been really interesting is the fact that you can actually get these systems to acknowledge certain words that are mentioned. So like if there's a complaint or things like that, or I'm unhappy or anything else like that, it can pick it up and flag a call. The reason I mention this is because obviously in the past, when we're talking about complaints and feedback and positive feedback, we haven't really been the best as we can possibly be within a local authority. Within this, can the partnership and SRS help us in order to move that forward as well, to start picking up certain trends in relation to both positive and negative, to make sure that we are being the best that we can be collectively? Thank you.
So as part of that proof of concept, there was a test of sentiment analysis, which is what you're describing. So yeah, absolutely, we will be looking at that going forward, and we would put that into the contact centre work. When that comes, I don't know, but we would absolutely be working on that.
Thank you. I do have a couple more questions, but Chair, I don't know if you want to open up and come back to me. It's up to you, Chair.
You've got the screen at the moment, Councillor Marshall, so yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that, thank you. So the other one is, what specific measures are being taken to address the overspending on data lines and contracts, please?
So, we review the budgets each year, and that's not just with Newport. We work with our technical advisors and the service managers to understand what contracts are needed going forward, where we could potentially have economies of scale through collaboration with the other partners. So we're always reviewing our budget and where savings can be made. The one on the data lines is something that we've been working on, sort of the transfer over to Gamma, a long-term contract that we've had that works really well. The Newport's given over onto that now, so we'll see the savings there. But yes, it is. We know the current climate within local authorities, and we're always looking at where we can make the savings too.
Thank you. And you know, there is this year that there's a potential for it being quite a nasty budget year. So it's interesting to hear that answer. Thank you, in relation to that. I know it was briefly mentioned within the initial kind of report, but it'd be interesting to know how SRS are ensuring that schools' critical systems are safeguarded during breakdowns as well. But that also links to the fact of ensuring the ongoing compliance with evolving cybersecurity threats. And I know backups was mentioned as one part of it, but just is there anything else to be mentioned in that regard, please? Thank you.
So we've got lots of security controls in place. Newport actually had a contract in place for a product which, if you are breached, it will kind of lock down users, it will lock down devices. It's a ransomware product. That wasn't in the school's estate initially, but then probably 6 months after you had your contract, I think we put one across the SRS for all partners, and then we went back and picked up schools in Newport. For the schools in Newport, they have the kind of front end protection of the SOC scene, which identifies any threats coming into the organisation. And then we've got the ransom care on the kind of back end. So if somebody does get through, theoretically, that should then stop anything happening of anything coming through. But we look after the school's infrastructure, the centralised infrastructure, in the same way we do the corporate. So we try and apply all the same policies and ways of working, things like passwords, things like how the devices are set up. It's all very similar to the corporate, some differences, but very similar. The data center is in the same place. All the racks for schools are next to the racks for corporate provision, and that's a super protected data center, which whether it's publicly known or not, I don't know, but that's where Microsoft provide their services from currently as well. So it's a very secure data center. Health are in the same place. So we do everything we do for corporate, we do for education. So not that anything can never break down, but touch wood, touch wood, school provision is in a lot more stable place than it historically was.
Thank you. And I hope that crosses over, obviously, to the corporate side as well. And I know, as members know of my background, obviously having an Irish family, so I keep in, contact with Irish news. And I know there was a big thing here recently, well, I say recently, in the last couple of years, where hijackers took over the HSE and basically tried to get money from them and wipe them off all the systems. So I hope, and you can reassure us that that would be unlikely, and to what degree is there a possibility that you're able to do that for us?
Yeah, I'll just jump a second, Councillor Marshall, because I know Dominic wants to.
Thank you, Councillor Marshall. Yeah, just to let you know as well that I've worked with Karen Keane as our tech leads, and we do engage with schools on this from an awareness piece. And we do work with the non-SLA schools as well that are not signed up to the SRS SLA to give some of that guidance and stuff that we've had passed down from Welsh Government. So just to be aware of that, so schools are sided on and actually are thinking about some of the things around cyber security and having, putting measures in place and having plans in place as well.
And on the question you just asked, like I say, you can never say never, and our approach is always assume that you are able to be breached. And that's why we have things like the offsite backup. That's why things like our Office 365 backup and our on-site backup are what we call immutable. Immutability, the basic meaning of that is that when your backup is taken, it's locked. So you can't change it, and theoretically ransomware can't change it. So there are lots of different controls put in place to try and protect everything to as much as we possibly can. But obviously you can never say that everything is entirely 100% protected, but I personally feel we've done a really good job in trying to protect both front and back end belt and braces, and trying to cover everything in the middle as well, which I know a lot of other organisations probably wouldn't do. So I'd say we have more protection than many others that I know and work with.
Can I add something to that, please? Just the last bit, I think we've probably covered a little bit. Dom mentioned it, which is just the people. So one of the main areas of focus for breach is we work closely with the information security team within Newport, Tarek and the team, to make sure that phishing exercises, all the policies that are put in place for security are up to date, password resets, complexity. So as well as the technology piece, we work closely with Newport on the people piece as well to make sure that obviously any education and any policies that are put in place are maintained and communicated.
That's great. Thank you very much. And it's also, as you can imagine, a concern because obviously of the other side of it, having people's information and data, which obviously we don't want to fall foul of because it can be quite expensive, but also the issues that may be faced by those individuals because of certain data getting out there. The other one, I was actually on the committee when I believe we first scrutinised you back in 2017, 2018, and I know we were talking then about hopefully bringing on extra organisations on there. I'm just wondering what work has been undertaken. Is there any kind of aspirations or any contact being made or any kind of, in the pipeline or anything like that? I understand about the commercial sensitivities, but is there anything there that you could enlighten us of maybe about, is the SRS looking to expand, more within the region and what work is being done in that regard to understand, the context of the wider field moving forward?
So we are in conversation with an LA currently. I wouldn't be able to say who they are because there's obviously lots of processes to go through to get to a place where you can say that. But yeah, I would say there's a greater interest today than there was when Newport joined the SRS from other local authorities. I think that's driven possibly out of the current situation many find themselves in. I would say that I think lots of organisations and lots of technology or digital functions within organisations, they will just default to that. I need to remove. I'll take the 10%, and possibly less, or they may be a bit risk averse to having a conversation with us about, what could be done across the sector. And we're absolutely open to, if anybody wants to have a conversation with us about possible shared service or collaboration or providing a technology service to them as a public sector organisation, we'd love to do that. But you often tend to get caught up in the, I probably unfairly say this now, but you get caught up in the organisational identity or the protectionism or the I don't want to lose my budget service, etc., or I don't want to lose the control of my service. So whereas our 4 partners have kind of made those brave decisions a number of years ago, I don't know whether something needs to change in the public sector, maybe where shared service is seen a bit more positively in a different light from where it currently is. I think we are the enabler of what you will need to do going forward. And I think if people wait much longer, it may be too late for them to be able to get to the place where we now currently are and what we can do for you. That's borne out by everything we've spoken about today. So yeah, I mean, if anybody's watching, we'd love to talk to anybody.
See if anyone's watching.
Thank you very much. And as normal, I may piggyback on another question, but I'll finish with the question I normally begin with. Basically, and I think a few understand it's a cheeky question, but if you were a school teacher grading a report and the partnership is the, to be graded, what would you grade it out of 10? And what would you say is the reasons why, and what kind of challenges would you say is within that? Thank you.
Self-critical. If I graded it from when you came in, if I graded the Newport service from when you joined out of 10, it would be somewhere down around 2 or 3, simply because of the resilience of the infrastructures, the state it was in, and the way it was operating. And I think from an infrastructure perspective, if you go from then to now, you're up around the 8, 9. You can always improve, but you're far more solid than you ever were in that state before. From a people perspective, I would also say the same, because you were siloed. You were there were staffing issues in Newport, people leaving, or people wanted to go and do different things. And we now have a much better resilience position from people who know all of your infrastructure and how to operate it than you ever had before. But I would say the same. You probably kind of 3 or 4 on staffing when you joined, up to a 7 or 8 now. There are always things you can do differently. We've been in meetings today where we're talking to staff about, we might need to change how we've done this in the past into a new way of doing it going forward. Or the change we made may not quite have worked out the way we hoped it would. How do we change that going forward? So I can't ever give a 10. It's not in my nature to give a 10. But certainly from a Newport specific perspective, I would say both have gone from a low 2, 3, 4 up to 7, 8, 9. From a partnership perspective, I think we're in a much more positive place today than we were when Newport joined. because we're starting to see more and more of the shared collaborative working and more service areas working together. And we probably, if you take the Karen and Kerry example in the contact centre, we probably wouldn't have even recognised those people needed to be involved or existed when we first joined. Whereas our mindset has flipped, their view of working with us has flipped, and we're starting to work on those shared projects together. So collaboration wise, I'd probably put us at a 5 or 6, simply because I think there are so many more things we can do across our organisations as collaborative projects, and so many more things we could be doing together. But it's a long way from where we were in the past.
Thank you. It'd be interesting. Thank you. I was going to say it'd be interesting to hear of the challenges that you feel within the partnership in order to enlighten us to hopefully ask questions later, and also just when, if possible, to keep us informed as councillors of anything within the kind of information technology sphere, because obviously technology is moving at a fast pace, and unfortunately I think, you know, even myself and colleagues may be left behind in understanding what's going on both locally, but what also is the aspirations of what is happening, you know, both within local, region, national, international, to see what we can ask questions about, but also to what we can aspire and want moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Marshall. I thought for about a millisecond, I thought we were going to get away without you asking that question. No, it's not going to happen, is it? Mark, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I guess that's a really difficult question for Matt or SRS or indeed for the digital team in Newport to answer. And I suppose what I would kind of defer to, in a sense, is the performance information in that report, because there's very strong performance information in that report, and whatever we might subjectively kind of score ourselves or our partners or whatever, I think, you know, that is the best indicator of performance. And I think I'm right in saying all those performance indicators are above target. You know, there's some stuff on external on audits as well, which is very positive. So, you know, we're here to make things better collectively. And as Matt said, the collaboration piece is quite tricky with a number of partners, and there's a lot of opportunities there. But you know, it has definitely got an awful lot better over the years through that collective effort. And I think, you know, that's demonstrated in those kind of numbers, really.
Thank you, Mark. I can't see any other hands at the moment, but before we take any other questions, can I just take you back to the security issue a minute? Councillor Marshall's questions were quite involved. I'm going to bring the level right down now. We're going on the theory that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. I know a number of councillors, and I'm sure probably some employees would happily admit they're not particularly IT literate. So probably the biggest weakness would be councillors clicking on links that they shouldn't be clicking on, or I think you partially answered this, Mike, actually, but am I right in thinking that the back end software and the procedures you put in place sort of protect us from the unwitting user doing something they shouldn't be doing?
They are designed to.
I think so there's the alert piece, there's the protection, and then there's the recovery. They're the three elements that we look towards. So there'll always be people that are clicking links, and as Matt said, there's a piece of software that Newport procured first, which it was a quite a unique product at its time, which was, we know something's happened and we'll put something in place to stop it going any further. Whereas all the other ones were a prevention, complete prevention. This is an alert and a kind of putting the from the shackles on to stop things going any further. So while we realise we're, you know, working and supporting Tarek and the digital team on security pieces, there's always going to be an element where somebody will click on a link. It's putting the processes in place below the waterline, so they're not stopping you from working, but they catch an issue when something happens.
Right.
Don't click on links.
Yeah. I never did it. I
should have just said that.
Just put a fence on it. Can I ask as well, still linked to security, the idea of cloud telephony. In terms of sort of data interception or leaks of data and communication and so on, would that improve security in that sense over that moment, or is it a bigger risk?
Cloud means a million different things to lots of different people. So for us, cloud just means that the service is coming from somewhere that's not on site. Our cloud telephony is coming from Microsoft stack of services. anytime someone starts a work laptop up, it automatically connects you via a virtual private network, which is secure, to the Newport provision in Office 365. So you can't turn that off. So by default, when you log in with a Newport account, you are connected to a secure service. You can't get to it otherwise. So cloud telephony operates within that boundary.
Within that, fine.
So anytime you make a call in Teams, it is encrypted. You're not on the outside open network with a cloud service that someone's listening. It is all inside the network. It's all secured. It's coming across BSPA, encrypted network. Even if you're sat in Starbucks, you connect to Wi-Fi, your VPN will connect you straight away. So you cannot do it in an insecure.
And other coffee shops are available. Thanks very much. Councillor Bright.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chair. Well, first of all, just recommend, oh, sorry, not recommend, wrong word. What I was trying to say is it's really easy to digest report and to say thank you for producing that. It's really clear, set out, and really good presentation. And there is much to recommend from that report. For the 94% return on customer satisfaction in the survey is really, really good, really positive news. And in fact, the website's been rolled out. Phase 1's rolled out, and the new website front of house looks brilliant, much better than the old design we had. Now, clearly, work's still going on. I assume since phase 1's finished, there'll be phase 2, phase 3. I just wonder, will they be addressing issues like the search facility? So currently, that's not really functioning as it should. You could type in news into the search facility, and it yields no results. But if you type in newsroom, then you get the page you're looking for. So there seems some sort of issue there. And secondly, in relation to customer contact, so if you raise an inquiry via the website, generates a code, maybe street lighting, whatever, and then you go back in again to comment on that query, it generates a whole new inquiry path. You don't get, say, you get a new number. So it's one way. Are they going to be connected in further phases in the website development? Thank you.
What we'll do is we'll take those comments away because they're not part of the SRS report. So we're a little bit, and we were on the previous questions really, we're a little bit way out now of the SRS performance, but there is an ongoing programme of work around the website, and I'll just note those comments myself and take those back and check that's being developed.
Fair comment, thank you.
Yeah, we did have a discussion earlier about trying to be careful about not straying into individual queries, but there's a good sort of grey area where what's service and what's not. But
It's a whole query here.
That's great. Thanks very much. Councillor Bright, did you have anything else? Oh, thanks. Councillor Hughes, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Same. I'd have to say I agree with what's been said because, like Councillor Marshall, I was there in 2017 when you set up, and some difficult conversations I think at the time. But it's been, one of the big successes is that you're still here in 2024. And I think that's, that's a testament to itself, I think, as well. But and I would say, just to add, some of the people that don't get a mention sometimes are the staff in the Civic, and they're incredibly helpful and understand that barrier. Sometimes it's coming on to the question really. It comes on to that barrier between the different skill capabilities of different staff members, and I think they manage that really well. I think I'd agree with what's been said by Councillor Bright and Councillor Marshall. I think the biggest feedback we get from certainly from residents is that interface between them and the council. I think there is work to be done there, but obviously you've given answers on that. But that's certainly an area I'd sort of still be looking at, and how we get that customer feedback from people about how they see it as improving. But the question really for me, linking into that somewhat, is in Newport we've got same as in Wales in general, we've got an ageing population across the board, and I think even when I sit in a room with Councillor Marshall, who's slightly younger than me, there's a big difference in in our understanding of IT. He's developing his skills through his work on AI, and it's fascinating listening to him talk. But we are going to have a workforce that's literally ranging, aren't we, from 17 right up to their sort of late 60s. And I think for me, as we're talking, you know, you guys are in IT, it's very familiar to you guys. But I think, you know, as that aging population increases, I think it's going to be harder for many people to interact on IT. And one of the common sort of feedbacks we get is that people don't even change jobs. So when we're even talking about our own staff base, they're always very nervous about changing jobs, because one of the biggest anxieties they have is starting a whole new program of learning on IT, and that causes a lot of anxiety for people. And I think that's across the board in the country. So I think one of the things I'd like to see maybe incorporated into the next report is how, you know, how we're thinking about those issues as they develop. And it's early days, I know, you know, that side of things, but really around incorporating that into our thinking a little bit. You know, there are some really adventurous things going on. We've talked about apprenticeships for younger people. There are apprenticeships for older people as well. So there's some really good stuff happening out there. We're looking at, you know, if you're looking at countries like Japan, who are seen as being very tech savvy, but actually on the ground in Japan, they're very stuck in the 80s, you know, because the aging population doesn't want to adapt new technology. They're still stuck there with flip phones, and they're still sort of, you know, very much behind actually some of the other countries who are developing quickly. So I think it's just about raising that awareness, really, that not everybody's in the same place. It causes a lot of anxiety. So all the new, and it's very fast, like you said earlier. The technology is changing very quickly, and it's just to make sure that as we're introducing those changes, that we are bringing along and consulting and working with the older population in Newport, and the care groups that we've got, and the groups that support older people, and the 50 pluses. I don't think we're even going into that generation who are in there. We've got almost 800,000 of our population in Wales now are over 65. So it's a relevant issue. But it's a relevant issue for people over 50, you know, because I struggle, you know, with some of the technology changes and the speed of those technology changes. So it's just to put that on the radar, really. I'm not expecting a detailed reply on that at this stage, but it's maybe something I'd be asking you next time, really, about how we're thinking about that, if that's okay.
I don't think anybody wants to respond to that.
Yes, I would just say, again, I think this is largely an digital question, which is obviously the subject of a different scrutiny. But within the strategy, we do consider digital inclusion. And you've said about some groups, and obviously there are others. People with less good language skills would be another group that might be a bit excluded. Lots of reasons, aren't there? So I think it's a consideration for you, but it's an even more important consideration for us in our digital strategy. And we know the point made.
Yeah.
Thanks, Trace. Well, I can't see any other hands, so I'm assuming that's all the questions. Okay, thank you very much. I just want to say thanks again to you and your team for putting together such a comprehensive report and explaining it so clearly. I'm really grateful. Thank you. But just before we go, we're just going to formulate the comments and the recommendations that we've come up with. Neil, can I just have a few for that?
Just took a few comments. That it's a very well written report. Then people can understand it, digest. Councillor Hughes is comment about praise and the staff members as well. Councillor Marshall, it's interesting to see how things develop. AI should be there to support and not replace staff. Good to hear the education systems in a more stable place within cyber security. And interesting to hear the challenges when possible our members are able to be kept informed within information technology. Is there any other comments or recommendations in regards to the report itself, committee?
I think that covers everything that's been said, but any councillors think there's anything that's been missed there? Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, thank you. I couldn't quite hear the last bit, but I'm just making sure that basically that we can be kept updated with anything in context of digital, in basically anything digital that affects the partnership moving forward. It would be just any updates or anything written. It doesn't have to be verbal, just anything like that to move forward. Thank you.
Right, that's been noted. Thanks very much. So yeah, thank you again for your time. Much appreciated. Thank you. Oh, Reese, it's been put down there for some reason.
I'm going to sit the other side.
You're more than welcome to pick it up and take it somewhere else.
Spread around a little bit.
Okay, so we move on to item 4 on the agenda, which is the Safer Newport Community Safety Partnership update. So we'll just move straight on to the presentation. I think that's you, Reese.
Yeah, so this is going to be, I suppose.
Oh, sorry. Nicole, my apologies. Sorry. We got the cabinet member, Councillor Druitt, with us. Did you want to introduce or say anything before we start?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, and just before we hear the work of the team, just want to pay tribute to the work of the whole team, whose work is to keep Newport safer, and that improves the quality of the life of everyone in Newport, strengthens communities, prevents escalation, serious crime, promotes economic growth of the city, and protects vulnerable groups. So I really appreciate what the team is doing, and I thank them for all their work.
Well, thanks, Councillor. I definitely echo the comments as well. Sorry, Reese.
No, that's absolutely fine. So I suppose first of all, just to say you share, so obviously Councillor Druitt's cabinet member responsible this year. We've got both Janice Dent and Gordon, who provide, I suppose, do all the heavy lifting on a lot of this work. On screen, we've got Superintendent Jason White, who's here in place of Chief Superintendent Carl Williams, who's my co-chair of the Community Safety Partnership.
Jason.
Good evening, all.
So, I suppose just some opening points from me, and then we'll talk briefly through the report. So the Partnership Scrutiny Committee's got a specific statutory role in relation to Community Safety Partnership as outlined in the Crime and Disorder Act. Crime and Disorder Act basically requires 5 statutory partners, so that's the local authority, police, fire and rescue service, health board, and His Majesty's Probation Service to work collaboratively in order to tackle issues around crime and disorder within the local authority area. So the committee's role within this is to ensure that that partnership is working effectively. So, we're here to talk about work with partnerships doing rather than individual agencies. So to be really, really clear about this. I get that it's always a temptation when you're a senior police officer on a call to start asking police specific questions, but that is not the role of the committee in relation to this. Work we've done so far. So earlier this year, strategic needs assessment for community safety and violence. Serious violence has gone through this committee and cabinet, and then was agreed by council in July. So the planning, the assessment and the plan has all been done. We're in the process at the moment. That's the main point of the conversation today. The process at the moment of putting together those new governance arrangements in order to ensure that we are effective in our understanding of crime and disorder across Newport. We're delivering against those strategic priorities,
and we're also flexible to the changing issues around community safety across the area, because that is really important. Community safety partnerships not a static body. Issues happen in various places, and actually it operates on both a strategic and tactical and operational level. So we've got all that work in place as well. So it's really to talk about where we are with the structure and what we're doing around that. And also to offer some reassurance, I suppose, that actually, because we're putting this new structure in place, we are still working on a variety of issues across the city. So our new priorities are around serious and violent crime, antisocial behaviour, vulnerable groups, and safer places. But we also continue to work on, particularly on things like antisocial behaviour, serious violence, a safer city centre, and safer pill areas as well, as well as a range of other activities. So that was kind of my opening. Probably said some of the things Janice was going to say, but I just hand over to Janice and how they can talk through some of the detail of it.
Yeah, I think I'm probably going to pass straight to Helen, because I think everything that we've said I was going to cover. So yeah, straight to the
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, just within the report, it really just covers off how we've identified as a community safety partnership, how we're going to take the information we've gathered from the strategic needs assessment and put that into practice. So this is our way of trying to explain how we're putting that into practice via those documents in the appendices from page 39 onwards. So priority on that and following actions are embedding the new structure and fully adopting those objectives that have been set out, which are also in those appendices for you to see, to establish a detailed action plan and operational delivery plans, which will report to Safer Newport on a quarterly basis to hold those objectives to account and to ensure that those groups are meeting effectively and doing what we need them to do. To review data sets and establish key ways forward by subgroups. Those data sets, I think we've mentioned it in previous scrutiny committee actually, that we identified through the strategic needs assessment that actually we've got data gaps, that it told us the things we know, but we also know there's things that we don't yet know. So that being a priority moving forward. So really we want this new structure to be able to open up new avenues of discussions and to make them not just a talking shop, and to ensure that they're based on action and outcome. And so, yeah, we just hope that this report reflects kind of the work that we've undertaken in the last quarter to push that plan forward.
Thanks, Helen. Yeah, just going to open up the questions now. I'll just echo what we said earlier. We had obviously a pre-meeting before the main meeting started about what we might be looking at, and yeah, just to echo, this isn't a police scrutiny meeting, but I think the councillors are well aware of that anyway. But thank you, Councillor Hughes. I think you want to open up on this one.
Thank you, Chair. Well, for me, so it's been a frustrating journey. I think the safety of Newport. I think it has been for many councillors. I think I've lived in several cities. I've lived in London. I've lived, in other big cities in the UK, and of course, Newport has very similar problems in the sense where we know where people. If we talked about safety in the community, we would be talking about the behaviours of some residents. We'd be talking about e-scooters and all that, all the same stuff, all the drug issues, and that happens in all cities. I've certainly, in my time, 30 years in Newport, not felt it's any worse than anywhere, and in many ways, it's much better. We've got so many good things going on in Newport, and we've got so many really good things to look forward to, I think. So one of the things I think is in the pieces of work, I think, although there'll be lots of action happening along that journey on the ground, I think one of the things that we struggle with very, very badly sometimes in Newport is the perception of Newport. It's how, we're hit very, very hard on social media, often by people that don't live in Newport, sadly, often by people that do live in Newport. But I think, there are big changes happening. That you can see those changes happening if you spend regular time around the city, and there's some really positive things happening. And I think it's how that public safety work that's going on. It's how we communicate that to the public and actually make them feel safer about the city that they live in. And that's not taking away that some of those concerns are valid. We know the issues that we're dealing with. It is a big city, but sometimes I think that running alongside that, there has to be really good communications about what and I think that the police have got much better at it. In fairness, you've got your social media websites and stuff now, and you're putting out some very positive stories. We've got Rookie Cops, which is great program and all that sort of happening, and we've got some really good sort of stuff going on. But again, it's about not reinforcing the negatives, and having a really strong pushback on some of the stories that go out, which sometimes aren't even true. Let's be honest. So that's something I'd sort of focus on really, and I think that's something I found really disappointing living in Newport, is that that there's elements, like I say, that certainly have a basis, but there's also a lot of stuff that just doesn't have any basis at all, or isn't as bad as what that perception is made. So I hope that we are pushing back on that as well.
Thanks, Councillor. Before I ask your comments on that, Superintendent White, I need to apologise. Did you want to make any contributions to the overall presentation before we go on to questions?
No, I'm happy to field any comments as is necessary, really. So, no, I'm quite happy at the moment not to add anything further, to be honest, than what's already been mentioned.
Okay, thanks. Helen, you look like you wanted to respond.
Well, I can, unless you want.
Well, I'll start.
Go on, yeah.
It is a really good point. So I suppose a couple of things I'd say. So it is a requirement and also the right thing to do for us to test public perception of crime and disorder whilst you're doing your streaming needs. We have to do it. It is the right thing to do. So we have done it in relation to the strategic needs assessment and the plan this time. And you are correct that people's perception about community safety is not always borne out by the reality of what's happening. But it's also really important if there's a fear of crime, we have to tackle that as well. We need to treat that almost the same way as we have to treat actual crime. So I think that's really important. Interestingly, in the last Safe Newport Partnership Board meeting, the comms piece was pretty high up on the agenda, because I think I've been co-chair the Community Safety Partnership in Newport now for 4 years, and we've done some really good work in that, and some really good partnership work on both strategic level, but also an operational level, particularly with the relationship with Red Police for that period of time, and haven't always been great at telling people about the things that we've done and the impacts that has had. It was really interesting, and I think I said it in the last partnership board meeting. BBC ran a piece around this national issue around cannabis cultivation. And the piece about Newport was a positive piece about Newport, about the really proactive work that we went to take in Newport in order to tackle that issue. So there's some really good messages and good stories out there, and we need to do more of that.
Yeah, just to add to that, in terms of actionable kind of outcome on that, is I've set up with also colleagues within the public protection team, but also with comms, to have a monthly meeting around community safety and comms and the good practice, but also in terms of the structure, there are some key pieces of work we can bring in that are positive, more kind of based on community feeling rather than just talking about how bad things are, because that's not the message that is real. That's often that perception, but it's about holding that tension between those two things, because perception is such an impact on reputation. So we can't ignore that perception. But yeah, we have got established now monthly meetings to review and share best news and good news with comms, so that we can share that more quickly. But I think it's important that we look at that as well as a partnership. As Rhys mentioned at the beginning, there's 5 statutory partners. So yes, we can do our part as Newport local authority, but also when police will do their part in terms of the good practice that they're sharing. But it's also something we probably need to pull into health and fire and rescue as well in terms of that moving forward.
Thanks, Danny. Jen?
Yeah, just to say as well, that it's part of our wider comms strategy in relation to making sure that we are sharing more of those positive stories about Newport as a whole, not just about community safety, but engendering that kind of pride again for Newport, and a realistic picture of what it's like to live, work, and kind of come to Newport.
Thanks, Janice. I mean, yeah, I've got to say myself, I mean, this theme has cropped up in so many meetings that I've been to recently, that the perception against the actual reality. But as we said, and as you both said as well, you can't ignore the perception, because how people feel is really important. So the facts may not bear out the perception, it still needs to be dealt with.
I'll start the ball rolling, Chair, if I can, because I made a choice to move to Newport, and it's an absolutely fantastic city to live in, and it's location wise to the Brecons to everything around us is wonderful, and the people are fantastic, and our festivals are fantastic. So I'll start that ball rolling as we're being recorded, so that's where we start off.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Druid, I know you want to come in, and then I'll go with the superintendent voice.
Yeah, I was just going to point out the if you like, positive news about the public spaces protection orders that have been put in place, and the headlines that made in the Argus over a few nights. And I think that's certainly something that from what Jan said is what we want to do.
Yeah, good point. It does make a difference. Yeah. Superintendent White?
Yeah, thank you. I think just to echo what Rhys and others have said, really, it has to be a joined up approach. I think our comms, the whole overall sort of comms strategy. I think I've said in full council about a week or so ago that we've employed somebody full time in Newport at the moment to really push out those positive messages. But I need to do it in conjunction with the local authority, with fire, with health, so we're getting that message across the board. I think it's important to really understand our communities, to understand how they want to be engaged with, how they want to be communicated with as well. And so much so that the interim chief constable at the moment, Mark Hobra, has set up a strategic engagement board, so we can really get to a really good understanding through our partners exactly what is our makeup of our communities and how we best communicate those messages. But I think it's really key. We talk about rookies, it was mentioned a short while ago. That's become really incredibly popular, because I think you actually see the human side of police officers, not just necessarily the people in the uniform. You see them in their home with their families and children and stuff like that. So it brings a real human element. And I think it hopefully breaks down a lot of those barriers, I think, to the public. Perception is everything, isn't it? And I think, collaboratively, I think there's still a fair bit to go. But I think if we can do it in a much more joined up approach rather than doing it in silos, I think we'll make some really good progress.
Yeah, 100%. Jason? I can't see any other hands at the moment. Has anybody else got questions they want to put forward? Councillor Marshall?
Thank you. Chair, I think I came in after Alan on a question, so I don't mind if Alan on Councillor Screen was to go before me.
Yeah, that's right, Councillor Screen.
Oh yeah, thank you, Chair. I just going to ask about the new structures and subgroups you put in place, and how are you going to measure the effectiveness of those new structures and subgroups? What sort of metrics are you going to be using? And I think the other question was on page 38, which was about challenges and improvements identified. You mentioned data collection and monitoring, involvement and engagement. And I think there's something in the appendices about involvement and engagement, involving the community, engaging the community. So could you just sort of brief, explanation of what you intend to do on that one Is that okay?
Thanks, Councillor Street. So again, similar format. I'll start. I'm sure Janice and Hallie will add some further detail to that. So the first bit about the metrics and understanding, the effectiveness of what we're doing. I think that comes in two forms. So we picked those strategic priorities. They've been identified based on community feedback and data. So on a macro level, the effectiveness of those groups will be impact on perception and also, crime and disorder data associated with those. Within that, though, there will be specific operations and programs of work. So within that, they will have their own particular measures of success and impact. So, we run, for instance, there'll be, series of joint operations run with the police, programs run with South Wales Fire and Rescue, etc., which will have specific outcomes and themes. So in those plans within there, what I'll be looking at as here, I'll speak on behalf of Chief Superintendent as well, and this is real detail about the outcomes we're hoping to achieve and actually measurements of them. So both in macro and so micro level, we'll have that data, and that will be reported through the scrutiny committee as we go through the year. So that those challenges and improvements. One of the things we found through the development of strategic needs assessment, I think Helen commented on this already, is that we've a lot of data in some respects. Actually, quite a number of things that were raised by the community as issues. We didn't have a lot of data across the partners. So, looking at ourselves, police, South Wales Fire and Rescue, health data, RSLs, voluntary sector organisations, etc., because it's a range of partners working across this. We don't think we've got a complete set of data in relation to those issues. So that is part of what we need to do, because until we've got that, we're going to find it difficult to measure the success we've got against some of those issues. So that work is in progress at the moment. Involvement engagement, and there's two bits to that for me. One is, I think this point is specifically in relation to statutory partners. Now, it's saying this in a really complicated way, and I'm going to try and think about it saying it in a really simple way. And the previous partnership arrangement, Community Safety Partnership, delivered part of the Newport Wellbeing Plan. Now we've gone to a Gwent Public Service Board and a Gwent Wellbeing Plan. That is now different. And because of that, and also the pandemic, some of that involvement of statutory partners waned a little bit, but that's what we've picked back up again now. So I think that's it. I think the bit more broadly about engagement and involvement with our communities is really, really important. So not specifically related to the Community Safety Partnership, but related to other partnership activity. We undertook a really in-depth piece of community engagement work within PIL as part of the PIL master planning work. And that was engaging with a not-for-profit organisation to do that. And that gave us some really rich community safety information for that area. And, I think the resource we have internally and across partners needs to be brought together in order to try and do that in other parts of Newport. The engagement activity we undertook as part of the strategic needs assessment is something we'll do on a regular basis, because we've asked a question, we will do some stuff, we'll ask that question again to see whether that perception has changed. And again, I'll offer over to Janice and how they think I'll add anything to that.
Yeah, I think going on to the metrics, so it can be really difficult, which is why we need all of us to sit around the table, the 5 statutory partners and our, kind of more third sector partners, because depending on what you're looking at. So if I give police data as an example, crime data, just because incident reports have gone up doesn't mean that that's a bad thing. Because actually, Helen is working with the antisocial behaviour team at the moment about working with our communities on how they can report antisocial behaviour. Well, the chances are next time we look at data, there's going to be a spike, hopefully, that sounds awful, but it's likely to be a spike in those reports. But that's because we've done something positive. But I'm working with the communities about how they can kind of report and address those issues. So there's that kind of, the delivery plans are obviously going to have different metrics, but we need to be really careful when we're reporting and when we're, going back to what Councillor Hughes was saying about perception as well. We need to be really clear that any analysis we do of that and any commentary explains why it's gone up, and it isn't that Newport is necessarily getting worse at something. So that's definitely something that we're working on with our partners, and how we communicate that, even if that, when that does happen. Really important. The other thing we're doing in relation to, and I will pass on to Helen now, but in relation to engagement and involvement, and one of the things that we're doing as a team and a partnership is collating really kind of close community leaders. It's because we know that as a council, we're not always great at reaching all of our communities. So we're working at the moment on making sure that we're kind of, we've got key links within communities across the city, and we can make sure that we're getting representation and feedback from everyone, and just having those key contacts. And I know, Jason, you do a lot, don't you, from the police perspective with community engagement, how we can all learn from each other rather than kind of going out all of the time asking, the same people similar questions. It's just about how we collate and work together on that one as well.
I mean, on the question of metrics, I mean, would it be useful or possible to measure perception on a regular basis? Do you intend to do that?
Yeah, sorry, Councillor. We do run a perception survey roughly every 6 months or so, particularly around the city centre. So we run that one, and that one's going to be ongoing. And then, as Rich said, we will be doing kind of wider, not just about the city centre, but wider kind of perception related to the plan, and whether that's made a difference to how people feel.
Yeah, I think it's important you widen it, because there are areas which are very rural, and they have a different issues in terms of public protection and so on. So so it is important to widen it out away from just the city centre to other parts of the city. Thank you, Chair. It's very useful. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Helen, did you want to add anything?
Just in terms of place-based and engagement, our Safer Places subgroup is really going to pick up a lot of that individualised engagement with communities based on community needs, because we know we've got such a diverse communities across Newport, including the more rural areas, that we want to make sure we can focus on those needs that are very particular to them. And so we're pulling in colleagues from engagement into that meeting so that we can do that in the most effective way. So that Places group will pick up a lot of that work as well.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sween. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Some of that was a bit kind of a bit frazzly there. So I'm just wondering, what was the point on specific strategies being implemented to overcome data collection challenges? I think I might have heard of glitches, or maybe that being answered.
Yes.
But was that yes? Yeah, that's fine.
Yes, sorry.
I had snippets of it when I was going in and out of signal, so thank you for that. And I'll obviously watch the YouTube back. Thank you. So I think from the other one, it was also there. So the other one is, what feedback mechanisms are in place to ensure community needs are continually met? Again, it's linked into various things about those harder to reach community members, especially those that are elderly, things like that there, and about their perceived perception. Can we have some kind of information in relation to that, please? Thank you.
So you might have glitched out now, so we've already done it without repeating all of it. So a couple of things. We have to undertake the perception surveys anyway, so we will carry on doing those things. Janice talked about a piece of work where we're working with other bits of the organisation and statutory partners around how we engage better with those seldom heard groups, and actually linking with them, but not doubling up on resources, because obviously resources are a premium. So working with colleagues across the partnership around engagement with those groups. And then Helen talked about the safer places bit of this, and I think that's really important because that is a fundamental change from the way we've looked at it previously. We've had a safer city centre and a safer pill group in place during the last plan. What we'll now have is safer places, because actually there are priority needs across the city, and part of that's engaging with those communities and find out what the issues are, and actually working out some partnership planning in order to address those issues. But I think that was broadly the response to that earlier question, Councillor Marshall.
Thank you, Rhys. I think the other part about it was the feedback mechanisms as well. So, okay, we're engaging, we're getting information one way. How are we also getting the feedback to make sure that they understand that we are looking at it, that we do respect what they're telling us in order to work upon that?
Yeah, so sorry, that will be incorporated within it as well. And obviously we can report back in committee on those aspects when we report back at big dates.
And I think that there's an element of that will be picked up in that earlier conversation around comms and kind of positive messaging back, but not just positive messaging for the sake of it, but the real on the ground work that we're doing and the difference it's making. So hopefully that will match up. Well, the point of it is to match up with the work, the feedback that they've given us and the work we're putting in place based on the information we've got from them and how that's matching up.
Thank you. So it's always important to make sure that we are feeding back, as you appreciate. If they're feeding in, they also want to have it back, otherwise they won't engage with us. So it all comes part of that pack and parcel, doesn't it? My other question then is about how will the partnership adjust its objectives to address any emerging community safety issues over the next 5 years?
Yeah, I'll take that, Councillor Marshall. So we already do that. As I said at the start, if you look at this as kind of 3 tiers, there's a strategic approach to it. That's the strategic needs assessment and the plan. These are the big things, the big themes that we're going to be looking at across the time of the plan, and that will evolve over time. But actually, the work we do is on a tactical and operational level. So all the partners gather information and data. And it's important to differentiate between these things. There will be things that are emerging that the partnership will work together to address, and there will be things that emerge that some partners within the partnership will work together to address. So I talked about cannabis operations, Gwent Police, the local authority, and South Wales Fire and Rescue particularly. A lot of really targeted work associated with that. That was an emerging issue. It was uncovered by Gwent Police. Gwent Police raised that as an issue. The partners responded to that really quickly and with quite a lot of resource as well to tackle that. So things like that happen. I'll just be reiterating that we have a plan and things happen on a daily basis and we respond to those needs. We don't stick doggedly to the plan. That plan will evolve over time. I doubt it will look the same in 12 months' time as it does today, because A, we'll address some of the data gaps, and B, other things will happen with that period of time.
Thanks.
Hi.
Yeah, of course.
And it's just to say that the wider plan and the plan on the page is a longer strategic plan. But when you look at Appendix D with the delivery plan, that's the delivery plan for the year. So as Rhys has mentioned, and as we've mentioned in terms of gathering feedback and information, that will evolve. And so we'll review that towards the end of Q4 so that 25-26 can be reactive based on that, and also include progression on the things we've already done or need to continue with. So that document is more reactive and more shifting year on year.
Thanks, Alan. Superintendent White, see your hand up.
Yeah, sorry to get into the weeds and talk all things tactical, but ultimately we talk about strategy, but it's the doing on the ground that gets results, and it's that feedback I think is really important. And I think just to provide some reassurance to Councillor Marshall, just our partners, police, local authority, Newport City Homes, etc. We talk on a daily basis in terms of sharing information. We talk about emerging threats, trends. We talk about zero on bikes as obviously we have done for a little while now. But the one thing that we are looking to reintroduce in Newport, which is popular pre-COVID was partnership tasking, where everybody was coming around the table on a regular basis and talking about emerging trends, whether that be crime types, whether that be ASB. That was really, really well received many, many years ago prior to COVID kicking in, but it's something that is certainly we're looking to reintroduce back into Newport, try and get those partnership tasking meetings together so that people are actually sitting around the table and then discussing those emerging trends, because I think it's really important to have those conversations at a tactical level.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you. That's really obviously interesting, and you know, showing how the partnership is changing, seeing best practice, and actually working with that's really positive. Thank you. I think that links in as well. In some ways, it feels sometimes as community members, we as councillors are often forgotten about sometimes in terms of strategies and plans. Is it a possibility to link with us and tell us about what's happening within the partnerships to see how we can maybe get more involved within it? Because I know, you know, we read reports here in Partnership Scrutiny Committee, but I'm sure there's wider councillors, you know, across wards that'll be heavily interested in basically supporting, advertising, getting out, talking to those harder to reach groups. You know, it doesn't necessarily always have to be officers. It can be a collection of partnership between us as elected members and officers together, because we are in groups. So to, you know, don't forget us. You know, we are there as much as you hear us, you know, now and again, late nights, like tonight, is always a positivity there. And we also have links within religious groups and other cultural groups as well, you know, on this committee as well as within our councillor sphere on that side. And just also, what would you perceive as the main challenge or challenges in relation to this area that you might want to make us aware of? Thank you.
If I take the first bit and then I'll pass on to probably Chief Inspector White for the second bit, or Helen. But just for the first bit, it's something that we're really working with the Cabinet Member for Communications and Communities on, is that how we kind of better work with councillors and how we can better work as partnerships. I think sometimes with all of the comms that we do, that little bit might be kind of less effective than we would like. So it's something that we're working on to be able to make sure that we're improving, working with Dem Services colleagues on how we can better kind of involve people and ask for support and receive and give feedback.
Thanks. Then you should know about that.
Well, I suppose between myself and White, we probably we've got a series of priority activities, which obviously the 4 themes that we picked there. I think, you know, what we do see as a city, our challenges are different to the rest of Gwent. We will have challenges associated with serious and organised crime that the other areas don't, and actually quite a lot of the stuff that we see, you know, Jason's been in council, probably gets asked a question about e-bikes and e-scooters, well, illegal e-bikes and illegal e-scooters being driven legally, and actually what they're all about. And a lot of that is driven by organised crime. A lot of activity that we deal with is driven by that as well. So at the heart of quite a lot of the other issues we've got is that, you know, and that is because we are a city, and I think we just need to recognise that makes Newport different to the rest of Gwent. Basically, I don't know if you want to add anything into that.
Yeah, you touched on some really good points there, Rhys. So I think the first one is, I think Newport is quite unique when you compare to other parts of the force. So when you actually look at sexually exploited adults and females, it's predominantly Newport, and that comes with its own challenges. When you look at misuse of drugs, comes with its own challenges. But there's also seasonal trends and seasonal challenges that, you know, we talked in last council around fireworks and Operation Bang. You know, that prevents some considerable sort of resourcing over certain times of the year as well. So, but I think it's about our ability, I think, as a partnership to flex and respond to those changes as well, and not remain static. So it's about having those conversations daily, weekly, or depending on the immediacy of the issue, and then obviously then getting that information out to yourselves, stakeholders in our communities, which is really important, and keeping them abreast of what's going on really. So yeah, Newport is most certainly unique when you compare to the rest of the force area.
Thanks, Superintendent. Councillor Marshall, before I come back to you, Councillor Hughes, you've got your hand up. Is it a separate question or is it on the back of what the current discussion?
No, it's a slightly separate question, Chair.
Okay, I'll come back to you then. Sorry, Councillor Hussain, I'll do the same. I'll come back to you in a minute. Councillor Marshall.
Yeah, thank you. So we've heard about the challenges generally faced with the partnership collectively. I'm just wondering, in the partnership, is there any challenges amongst members of the partnership, just to understand what the dynamics of the partnership is, and is there any things that we can maybe do to either support or just have knowledge about what the points are, whether or not they're known, being worked upon, what type of things is there? Thank you.
I'll respond to them. Other than what I've already said around some of the issues we had around the back of the pandemic and changes to partnership arrangements. No, I think, it'll be for the committee. Today what you've got is what we would have had today was like, this is co-chaired by the local authority and Gwent Police. What you'd have had today are the co-chairship as an introduction to the new structure. In forthcoming committees, my expectation would be that the full range of statutory partners are sat here to field those questions, and it'll be for the committee to determine now whether they think there are any issues with that. But as things stand today, Councillor Marshall, we've got a fully committed partnership, statutory partners taking responsibility around some of the shared responsibilities we've got, and we will judge the effectiveness of that as we go through the coming year.
Thanks. Councillor Marshall, is that everything? Oh, he's gone. I'm assuming that's a yes.
No, I'm here. So I was just trying to fiddle around with the button. Sorry. Yeah, perfectly fine. It's just nice to understand, there's some things that will pose challenges in partnerships, like financial, like resources sometimes, and things like that there. So it's just a kind of context just to understand where we stand. So obviously there is acknowledgement and there's changing of structures and things like that there. So a lot of it is being addressed. It's just so, that we can have an understanding of, is there anything more that's on the table within the acknowledgements of what's already been noted. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've worked in community care community in the community for 30 years, and I think in the same way that we know that there are links between how good a school premises is impacts on children's education. I think there's a lot of that going on in the community as well, in the sense that if we know that we're dealing with empty buildings, if the environment looks better, if we've got high visibility on the ground with officers from council and police, then we know that people feel safer, that they take more pride in their communities, and then the regeneration work that we're doing as well ties into that. And I know we're doing a lot of really good work. We've the commitment is really we've got a cabinet member for the first time for the city centre, so we know that we're doing some lots of good work. But I guess the question for Rhys really is, are we confident that the departments that we've got in-house, Rhys, so if we look at how the cleansing departments and all the other departments that the regeneration, but are they working, are we confident about how they're coming together around the table to look at an area and think, what needs to happen in that area? I know we're working with the communities on that, but are we confident that our own teams in-house are also discussing those issues and actually work, because the work that they do in improving communities in general and how a community looks is going to impact, I think, in the long term on that sort of pride, isn't it? And hopefully lower crime from that.
It's a really good question. So I suppose my starter would be, obviously, 2021 now, council agreed a new structure. Within that structure, environment and public protection, the same service area deals with those issues now, and so they are absolutely interwoven, because you are absolutely right. It's the broken window effect. You see graffiti, you see rubbish, you see things happening, and it's more likely that things will happen. So Organisationally, we've restructured to tackle that. To bring it back into the partnership sphere, though, those services are also incredibly responsive, both on a sort of tactical and operational level as well. So Jason talked about this daily tasking. So when we've done daily tasking previously, they very often, because there's a crime and disorder issue, they're very often police led, but bits of the services, for instance, public protection element of the services and also street cleansing are involved very much in those. So actually, if there's a particular issue in a place, we'll make additional efforts in order to undertake a range of activities there in order to change the environment. Because I think that's really, really important. So do that. Also, really, really responsive if there is a potential issue. So we may have a demonstration or a march. Those teams work really, really closely with police around making sure that actually there isn't anything left on that route that could potentially be used if some disorder broke out, for instance. So I think really responsive. Obviously, there are resource limits to what we can do, but absolutely tied into what we're trying to achieve across the city.
Thanks, Rhys. That's great.
Thanks, Rhys. Helen?
Thanks, Kate. Yeah, just to add to that as well, that in particular, the Safer Places subgroup really reflects a lot of that with regen on that, infrastructure on that group. And so there is a lot of those conversations because we know it's all tied together. So yes, the membership of particularly the Safer Places subgroup and the working groups under that are reflective of that as well.
Great, that's really good.
Thanks very much. Councillor Hughes, did you have any other questions?
No, that's fine, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Hussain, thanks for your patience.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair. There was just one or two things that I wanted to mention. Just about the partnership going forward for 2024 on to 2029 and just the objectives. I was just thinking that it's really like Councillor Marshall said, it's really important to get the community and organisations involved. Especially engaging with community members and organisations, and we can at least get a better understanding of their concerns and priorities, because as over time things do change. So I was just wondering how you intend to go forward on that, and not forgetting that we are here also available as elected members to help any way we can.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that, didn't we, about how we can do that. So we will be reviewing every year the delivery plans under each of the objectives and whether the objectives need to change. So that will be happening every year. And then we'll working with a cabinet member about how we can, and democratic services kind of colleagues, as to how we can better kind of work with you as councillors and the links that you have within communities, and how we can just make sure that we're getting everybody's voice. We do the perception survey every 6 months or so. We will be doing more, but it's just about, and we do get really, really, kind of high numbers of responses on that. But we're always looking at how we can improve and what we can do better. And then going back to the partnership role, then about kind of collating that data and information that we're getting, that when police go out and speak to communities all the time, how can we kind of share that information? Similarly with our health colleagues, they go out and speak to people all of the time. They've got quite a decent, quite a kind of significant engagement team. So how can we learn from each other there? So yeah, just about how can we're always looking at what we can do better, and how we can get that involvement and voice stronger.
Thanks, Jan. Lisa, do you want to add something?
I suppose just to add in, because I think it's really important, because I think Councillor saying, I think it kind of answers part of that, but also some of the broader stuff about responsiveness. The standing agenda item within the board and also within the subgroups is around community tension monitoring. So we do a lot of work across partners around understanding what's going on in communities and actually where particular concerns are, so that we can address them. It's probably not great shouted about that and saying that's what we're doing, but it's something that's really important, because actually what we're trying to do is be responsive to stuff that's going on in the community and making sure people feel reassured. So I think there's a bit more for us to do with that, but it is something that's an ongoing piece of work for us as well.
Thanks, Reece.
I definitely, I completely agree there. Sorry, Chair, just to add, especially with the recent riots, I know there wasn't that much, many incidents in Newport. There was just one or two maybe, but I think the police, how they handled it and how they communicated with the places of worship and the mosques and the imams, I just, I can just like to say that. It was, it was a very, very good, communication between all the organisations.
Oh, thanks, Councillor. That's really good to hear that. So I paused there because I thought Superintendent White was going to say something, but
no, I was just and we were very quick, I think, to stand up that tensions monitoring group between ourselves, the local authority, and obviously then we had the mosque leaders, an extraordinary mosque leaders meeting, just so we could have that engagement and that reassurance, really. But we talked about communication earlier, and there was a lot of misinformation that was circulating around the time. So it's around getting our communities to challenge, I think, a lot of that misinformation. So before it goes viral, and then people then understandably then get anxious within their communities. So it's again, it shows just that partnership coming together. Myself and Reece, we're on pretty much speed dial, friends and family most days, Reece, aren't we, in terms of sharing information and talking about issues, potential issues just coming over the hill. So yeah, we've got that really good, I think, good working relationship, I think, amongst, that partnership.
That's great. Thanks, Superintendent. I think that's a really good positive note to finish on. I can't see any other hands at the moment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Hussain, did you want to come back?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay, thanks. Right, in that case then, we'll just go on to very quickly the formation of comments and recommendations. So, hand over to Neil.
Just a couple of comments. Councillor Marshall's really feel the positive work of the partnerships. Councillor Hughes's comment about it's important the communication and see if we can improve. It's good to see that it is being dealt with. It is important to push out positive messages across the board. Was there any other comments or recommendations the committee would like to make in relation to the report?
Sorry, Chair, I think the key one I took from that was that two-way communication and feedback to communities about what we were doing and the impact of it as well.
Yeah,
that's coming through from a group.
Just quickly check with everybody online. Is there any other comments you want to add? That wasn't mentioned?
One for me. I know it was addressed, but just the importance of using us as councillors as well, and don't forget us. So obviously, just to that was highlighted within it, and also to feedback that in future, hopefully will be appraised moving forward.
That's a good point. Yeah, thanks for Councillor Marshall. Anything else, Councillor Hughes? You're on mute, Jace.
Sorry, I had a bit of a blip there. Did we cover what Jason mentioned about the joint comms between both agencies? About working closer together on the comms side.
Yeah, we've got that. Thanks.
We've got that. Thanks. That's no problem.
Yes. Right, I think that's everything. So I just want to say thanks to everybody for putting that together and for answering the questions in such detail. Thanks very much for your time. Yeah. And save the cabinet member. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Sorry, Superintendent. My apologies. Thank you very much.
No, that's fine. Have a good evening, everyone. I'll speak to you all soon.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye. Right, the last part of the agenda then, item 5, scrutiny advisor reports. I'll just hand over to Neil for this part.
Just to advise the committee that the next meeting will be taking place on 23rd of October. We'll be discussing the Gwent partnership report and report. 6th of November, we'll have the North Joint Venture Strategic and Performance Review, and also the annual report. Just to update the committee, all actions of advising and outcomes, they're all up to date so far. We'll pass on the comments recommendation made from today's meeting on to officers in the next day or two.
Fantastic, thanks Neil. And I'm sure you'll be glad to know that is the end of the agenda. Thank you all very much for your time. Oh, hang on, sorry, I've almost forgot, my mistake. I've missed out the minutes of the last meeting. Can we just have a proposal just to check that they are correct?
Second, the chair.
Thank you both, we got that. I now do finally declare the meeting closed. Thank you very much for your time. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Neil.
Bye.